Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever addendum to Let's Do It Again. Cap wasn't able to be with Matt and I when we actually recorded our pitches, so I'm here with Cap to hear his Ghostbusters pitch.
Yeah, I'm gonna finally do one of these.
Yeah.
Eric, I love that show. I think it's fantastic, and I've wanted to get to do one ever since you guys started it. And every time you guys like a lot of the ones that you guys have done, I've been like, oh man, I wish I was there. I wish I could do that. So I begged.
Not next week's.
No, not
the
that
Ghost
one.
or the D&D movie.
Well, and not Page Master so much either.
That was not fun.
I love at the beginning of that when you're like, yeah, I don't know why we did that. You're like, this was a terrible idea. Let's not do that again.
The worst part is because we both had to go back and rewatch that movie for preparation, and we were like, oh, why are we doing this?
Did you watch it together?
No, but like we messaged each other on Facebook while we were watching it.
So, I begged and pleaded Eric for a few weeks to let me come on to one of these, and Eric was like, well, we got to figure out our format. I'm like, no, I want to meet Matt. Like, let me come on with the both of you. And I still haven't gotten to meet and talk to Matt.
Is Matt the only person on Geekvolution that does videos that you've never met?
Yeah, that would be unprecedented. He seems like a really great guy, though, and it was neat to listen to him saying that he hated that I wasn't there and that he was so excited to hear my pitch. So I hope to get.
Well, and he was really excited to hear your prompts. So
yeah,
and
then that didn't end up happening. Yeah, so I'm at some point, hopefully, if you'll have me come on and actually do one with the two of you. But I had my pitch halfway put together. And Eric, I guess in that video, you guys came up with the idea of doing this addendum thing and having me go ahead and pitch mine. So I spent part of the last couple days finishing it, and I think I went a little overboard, Eric.
It's okay.
I think because here's the thing, I don't outline, like, you know this about me. Like, when I write, I write. I don't outline anything. I don't outline rewinds. So like I structure as I go, and so it was really difficult to do this and not just start writing it. I even have bits of dialogue in mine.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. Should we just go ahead and jump into it?
Well, you said you wanted to talk a little bit at the front about how kind of weird and difficult pitching Ghostbusters is, even though you wouldn't think it would be.
Absolutely. Well, I have a little bit of sympathy for those guys making Ghostbusters 2 and trying not to repeat themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's a really fun premise, and it's hard to come up with, and it's amazing that you had an animated series that was on for that long, given that premise. It seems like a thing that's hard not to just do that first story again over and over again, unless you really push forward with status quo and allow things to massively change. And I think that was kind of the misstep with that movie.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest misstep was obviously just that they reset it.
What do you mean reset it?
Well, Ghostbusters are disbanded and they have to reform throughout the film.
Yeah.
Like, that second movie absolutely should have been they're just together and the next Ghostbusters adventure.
Yeah, and that just gives you sequelitis to the max. Something I had forgotten about was how many years after the original that was. Like, that's bad enough if you rush it out 2 or 3 years later, but there were 5.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff about that I want to talk about when we finally do a commentary for that movie.
Right. But anyway, no, that's just on my mind. I watched that again the other day in preparation for the commentary we're eventually going to do on that movie, and that informed my pitch a little bit.
Do you know what Dan Aykroyd's pitch for 3 was?
Well, he had a lot of different pitches over the years.
Well, but the thing that was consistent was he wanted them to go to Manhattan.
Yes, yeah, and it was going to be an alternate dimension thing, and I intentionally avoided that with mine because I knew he had that. One of the things that I found difficult with this too. Okay, so what I was saying was with Ghostbusters 2, I think they should have tried to leap forward as we were talking about, and that's kind of what I did. And again, I think I maybe went a little bit overboard with that because I'd love to see a Ghostbusters thing that was a little bit more of a character piece, which is totally counter to what Matt was doing with his pitch and what he was talking about.
Well, and yeah. Well, and we both kind of said, like, at the beginning, it's like, well, Ghostbusters isn't really a character thing.
Yeah, and it hasn't been, but I feel like that's the way to make it fresh again, is to make it that, and it can still be funny. But I think you can, add some dimension to those characters and make it really about something. But I tend to think that about most things.
Yeah.
So that's that's sort of my take on it, and what you'll hear a little bit from me. But another thing that I found difficult was not ripping off Eric Burnham.
I do that a little bit because I throw a carnival in my pitch.
Well, and I don't know how much of that series you've read, but you guys kept talking, and I think both of your pitches have, and mine doesn't. Both of your pitches has something akin to the Ghost Smashers from his run, and you even mentioned that as a possible name, but I don't think you were aware of that.
I've read the first two arcs, and so the rival team is set up a little bit.
Okay.
But I didn't realize their name was Ghost Smashers.
I think they were Ghost Smashers, but I haven't read that in a long time. I mean, that's been like 3 years now.
I've got the first hardcover collection. That's up in Tennessee. But this weekend I'm finally getting all my stuff from Tennessee, so I'm finally get to finish reading it.
So I thought it was interesting that you guys both landed on that, and it seems like kind of a clear thing to put in there that this being a comedy about a startup business, you'd have rival business.
Well, it's funny because we both did it differently. He did a literal rival team, and I just had one person.
Yeah. I like that Matt's was put two distinct different teams together of modern comedians.
Yeah.
I also loved that you guys both ended up in Seattle.
Yeah, that was weird.
That was really strange. You guys had this moment where you're like, how does that happen?
It's not even like both of us are like, one day we'll move to Seattle. Like,
yeah.
It's not like Seattle is a thing we talk about.
Exactly. I couldn't figure out what. Yeah, it's not like either of you are from there. Like, why did that come up? But yeah. I'll go ahead and get into mine here in a second. The big parallel that I was really surprised by, and I'm bringing this up now because this is kind of the crux of my pitch, is that to a degree, Matt has what the whole basic idea of mine is in his pitch, which is he has something in his, and he talks about this toward the end of his pitch about kind of humanizing ghosts and remembering that they were people once.
Right.
And I was really surprised when he brought that up because that is the entirety of my pitch.
Interesting.
So, my pitch, my movie is called Ghostbusters 3 with no tagline or anything because I hate that. When you have a number and then a tagline, but the other movies didn't have taglines, like that's annoying. Like, how did Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze and then we get into 3 and then it has nothing? Except now when you go to Netflix, it says it's Turtles in Time, but it wasn't called Turtles in Time.
Yeah.
So mine is Ghostbusters 3. You guys both did modern Ghostbusters movies. I wanted to... So this is a thing, obviously, that couldn't possibly happen because it would have had to be made in the 90s. And
that was part of what I said when I set up the initial premise, was if you just want to do a sequel to Ghostbusters...
And that's why I went that way, because I kind of didn't think either of you guys would.
Yeah, no. Yeah, well, I didn't know what Matt was going to do, but I never intended to do that.
So I thought I'd try it out. And originally, I had planned on having mine set around 92 or 93. But because of the story I'm telling, it can't be made until 1996.
Okay.
So my Ghostbusters 3 takes place and would be made in 96. I guess it could have been 95, but I like 96 because it's a year that a bunch of big kind of quirky science fiction things were coming out. Independence Day was that year, Mars Attacks was that year, and so I thought it would fit that year really well.
It probably would have been made 95, released 96.
Exactly, yeah, and I kind of like the flavor of it being released in 96, and so there were only a couple of characters I had to cast, and I was thinking, of course, about about actors that were active then for characters I cast. But the reason that it couldn't be before certainly the latter half of 1994 is because a character that shows up at the beginning of my movie that is featured here and there throughout is the ghost of Richard Nixon, and Nixon didn't die until 94, so it had to be made after that. My movie opens with kind of a teaser where I introduce this new character that will eventually sort of become a Ghostbuster, and I'm calling him Liam Druthers, and the name Druthers kind of factors into his character arc and what he's doing in the movie. I'd have him played by like a Freddie Prinze Jr. type, or maybe like a Chris O'Donnell.
Oh, okay.
And he's this ex-military guy who is, and like Freddie Prinze at the time was probably a little bit too young. I think he was like 20, but he was in the military a couple of years, and he's left, and he is saddened by constantly seeing his grandfather's ghost in the den of his old family home, who was murdered in the 60s by his wife's crazed ex-husband and was too late to stop him from brutally eviscerating his wife. So that ghost sits there every day just reliving that experience over and over again. And so his grandson, Liam Druthers, is wanting to find some way to bring his grandfather some peace, and he hates the Ghostbusters because they go around busting ghosts just for existing.
Right.
And that really bothers him, and he thinks that it's inhumane. And he goes from the den into this room that's this kind of makeshift research room that he's put together, where we see newspaper clippings all over the walls of ghost sightings and things having to do with the Ghostbusters. And we see that he's been putting together his own makeshift proton pack, and he has a jumpsuit lying on a table that has a patch with a ghost, but the ghost doesn't have a slash through it. And so he would be like a Ghostbuster that would be trying to help ghosts.
Ghost freer.
Yeah, exactly. Or he would only bust the bad ones.
Wasn't never mind. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
I'm pretty sure there's I think the first episode of Real Ghostbusters, they have a team of Ghostbusters, and I think their symbol is something like that.
Oh, okay. I didn't get it from that because I haven't seen much of that show. But I thought that was kind of the idea. And then we go into the opening credits, and the opening credits are over the Ecto 3, because it's got to be the Ecto 3. And,
well, yeah.
And it's driving down the streets of Washington, D.C. in order to go to the White House and bust the ghost of Richard Nixon, who has been constantly interrupting press conferences for Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton is annoyed about that, and so he calls up the Ghostbusters. And so the Ghostbusters go to the White House, and this leads to, and so like people at this point are not able to deny that there are ghosts, and this leads to a lot of talk about Ghostbusters expansion and political debate about whether the Ghostbusters should be allowed to remain a private entity, or if they should be forced to hand their technology over to the government so that it can become a public service. And it was interesting that you guys were talking a lot in your pitches, especially yours, about what you called the old like trash man idea, and that we would like naturally go that direction. What I kind of do with my movie is I make that an argument, and whether or not that should happen.
It's Iron Man 2.
Yeah, and it ends up kind of turning into Civil War. Which is funny because it's a movie that would have to be made in 1996, but it's impossible for it not to be informed by things I've seen in the last 20 years. So the So basically, what ends up happening is the government gives the Ghostbusters an ultimatum, and they're forced to. This is really opposite from both of your pitches, where they're actually forced to expand their business, or again give it totally over to the government, and they give them a whole bunch of stipulations, and there's a minimum of one team that has to be in each state. So they have to start training new Ghostbusters and train people to run these teams, and they're and Walter Peck is brought in, and he gets to approve anyone the Ghostbusters hire, which I put in here, and then I don't really do anything with it later in the movie, so I'm not sure where Peck would go or what I would do with him, but that was an idea I had.
That's very Burnham-y. He kind of does something similar.
He does, yeah. And the other big thing that ticks off Venkman, of course, is that there's all this red tape that makes it really hard to do their jobs. The biggest thing being that they have to offer property damage insurance. And they can no longer make people sign a piece of paper that says they're not responsible for anything that gets broken. And so Venkman quits the team over it. And so now they're down.
Can you imagine if they had to pay for Ghostbusters 1?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and
entire building.
And at one point, I had one, because it took me a while to land on a pitch, and one idea I had, but I couldn't figure out how to make a whole movie out of it, and I felt like it would have already happened. I thought about, because there's that line in Ghostbusters 2 about how they've been sued by a lot of people, and I liked the idea of they're getting put out of business again because they got sued by the Stay Puft Company. But I couldn't figure out how to make a whole movie out of it.
You know, it would be great if there was a conversation about, like, the no damage, like they have to pay for damages, and, like, debate or, like, arguing, no, hold on. The ghost did that. We didn't do that.
That wasn't our fault. Ray cannot be held accountable for the thoughts in his head.
I will give you the table. That's on us. That hole in the wall is not us.
All that food that Slimer ate, that's not us. So Venkman goes back to daytime television, and is a talk show host again, like he was in Ghostbusters 2. But now that the Ghostbusters are seen as a really important, viable service, he's more credible, and his show is more successful. And that'll be important a little bit later. So then we get to Janine, who has been training to get her own Ghostbusters team. That's another thing that I kind of got from Burnham. He has this really cool arc where Janine is a Ghostbuster. And
I've seen the cover for that, but I haven't gotten to that in his stuff.
Yeah, there's this whole new team that gets put together because because our regular Ghostbusters get sucked into another dimension, and she leads it. And I really kind of thought it was a misstep that she went back to the office after that, because she just came alive. She was wonderful during that. So I thought it'd be really cool for her to be a Ghostbuster in this, and for her to be training to run a team. And she and Lewis are getting married, and they want to move to another state where taxes are lower and where they can get more loopholes and stuff. and he's not a Ghostbuster anymore because they actually let him try to be a Ghostbuster for a week, but he kept fainting. So they couldn't have that. It wasn't viable. And so but they've kept him on to help with, like, tech stuff. And so what happens is each of the Ghostbusters has to go to another state and lead a new team for a while. Like, they might come back together later, but, like, they're just spread really thin. And the big argument is they don't know they can trust anybody else to do the job because nobody took it seriously until, like, recently.
Right.
And nobody knows the stuff they do about the science and everything. And so there's a line that Ray or someone has that's like, we don't want every state run by a Venkman. Because that would be really bad. So Winston, they draw straws to see who gets to stay in New York, and Winston draws the long straw, and everybody else has to leave. And he gets really excited at first, but then he's kind of terrified that he might not be up to the task because he doesn't have the science know-how that the others have. And his character arc throughout the movie is his realizing that he has the aptitude for the science. And that he's actually he actually has the most leadership potential of any of them.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I was just thinking as you said, I was like, well, you wouldn't want to give you wouldn't want a bunch of Egons either, because Egon's pure science and irrational. And I've never really considered Ray the leader. You're right. He would make the most sense as a leader.
Yeah. So this is when we start to really get into the plot stuff. Venkman has this Liam guy, the guy with the grandfather at the beginning, on his show because Liam has called in and has issues with the way the Ghostbusters conduct their business, and Venkman thinks that controversy might be good for his show. And he initially dismisses Liam as an eco-nut when he says that what the Ghostbusters do is inhumane, reminding him that they're busting the souls of human beings and that the majority of them are good people, this is Liam, who haven't allowed themselves to move on to the afterlife. And this becomes kind of the crux of the plot, this idea of people not being able to move on and whether or not that's the reason that they stay on Earth. So this guy has studied the paranormal as much as Ray and Egon and seems to know all that stuff as well as they do. And he says busting every ghost is like arresting every homeless person for being homeless. And then Venkman says, homeless people didn't turn my friends into dogs or create an 80-foot marshmallow man or turn the New York sewer into a river of slime. And then Liam says, neither did my grandfather. And so there's this argument about whether or not every ghost is bad and whether they're just a nuisance that we can learn to live with.
Didn't do anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Ate food.
yeah, exactly. And then his big line that would probably be kind of like the trailer bait for the movie is it's time we had someone else to call.
Oh.
And so Liam ends up going... Well, so the next thing that happens is Venkman goes to the Ghostbusters and basically says, something's about to happen. This guy's going to do something stupid. I just know it. But there's also this argument, especially between Ray and Venkman, about Venkman leaving and they're not being happy about that. And Venkman has this speech where he says, "I know you hate Peck. Everybody hates Peck. I'd take Ghost Nixon over Peck. But ultimatum or not, the president isn't wrong. People aren't ignoring all the spooks anymore, and a lot of people are scared that whatever's in their fridge or closet or high school auditorium is going to be the next Gozer or Vigo. The country, heck, the world needs us, Venkman." And then Venkman says, "They're all wrong." He says they're all wrong. Yeah, I see. I just started writing at some point. He says they're all wrong. There's nothing to worry about. Those things only happen to Dana and only in New York. That's why she moved.
Or if you go with my pitch, there's a followable graph of when evil spikes.
Yeah, I liked that idea a lot, but I thought it would be fun to finally acknowledge how totally coincidental it was that Dana was involved in both of those things.
Yeah.
They never talk about that in that movie, and I always thought that was weird. You think
or that she completely changes career paths in between films.
Well, yeah, but at least they still remember that she's with the orchestra and she talks about going back to the orchestra.
That's true.
But yeah, you're right. But you'd think Egon would immediately be like, "Holy crap, maybe there's a pattern."
Maybe like she is some kind of demon magnet. I'm not really sure what Vigo is. I know Gozer's a god or a demon or something.
So Venkman has this character arc through the movie about how he's not obsessed with being a Ghostbuster so much as he is with New York. and he's incapable of leaving the city. And so I was a little bit worried about kind of a retread thing of he and Dana once again not being together, but it's not because they had a fight or they didn't get along. It's because she didn't want to keep getting attacked by ghosts and didn't want her kid to get attacked by ghosts. And so she left the city, and she's kind of hoping eventually he'll leave, but I mean, I don't know if she's waiting for him or not. She does show up toward the end of this, and she ends up being a Ghostbuster because everybody ends up being a Ghostbuster by the end of my movie.
Well, you know, her being a Ghostbuster would have made more sense at the end of 2 than...
by a lot. Than Lewis.
Than Lewis.
By a lot. Or again, Janine.
Yeah. Well, Janine in Ghostbusters 2 is a very different character.
That's true. But at least she works there and maybe has seen the equipment operated.
It's true.
Like, it's weird that she's standing next to him and helps him get dressed and stuff, and that she's not thinking, maybe I should put one of these on. Now, I don't know how many they have, and that ends up being an issue with my movie, too, is that, like, there are too many ghosts and not enough proton packs. So we get to the end of the first act, and Liam goes into this, like, really atmospheric scene where he climbs to the top of a really tall building, probably some major landmark, I don't know which one. And he shoots his makeshift proton pack into the sky, and the colors are wrong. You guys had some stuff about wrong colors with proton packs. And he pulls out this old book and reads an incantation, and we see this big rip in space-time that opens up in the sky. And he pulls out also a makeshift ghost trap that has his grandfather in it. And he sends his grandfather back through the rip, and then he says, "Rest in peace," and it closes, and that's the end of the first act. And what we find out is that he has, what he thinks he's done with this incantation is closed off the afterlife to our world so that when ghosts cross over, they don't have the chance to come back over. They just stay in the afterlife. And we find out that there's kind of this wall that you can pass through. So there's this so there's this question, and Ray knows the answer because he reads all the occult books. There's this question about when Liam at the beginning of the second act comes to the Ghostbusters, basically telling them, "Okay, I've cleaned up your mess for you, and now all you have to do is go get rid of the rest of the ghosts, and I've solved your problem for you." And in that sense, it's sort of like Age of Ultron, where he's like Tony Stark, and he's saying, you know, isn't the point for us not to have to do this anymore? And so the idea is when people die, their spirits actually do cross over partially, and they have an option, it's all about choice, to either go directly into the afterlife where then they can't come back out unless something crazy like Vigo or something happens that opens that up completely, or they can come back through the void and stay on Earth. And what he's done is he's closed it off so that you wouldn't have ghosts ever coming back, and they're forced to go off into the afterlife and stay there. The problem is that what he actually did was he closed off both sides.
Oh.
So now the main conflict is when people die, their souls don't cross over, and everyone's a ghost.
He under the domed the afterlife.
Exactly. Yep. So like I said, I wrote way too much, so I'm gonna try to go at this a little bit faster. But
that's a really great hook.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I guess it's not a hook. A hook would be in the beginning, but that's a really good premise.
What we find out the book is it's this scary big ancient black book, and he stole it from some museum somewhere, and the book summons this demon that mans the door to the afterlife and is basically like the creature in Greek mythology that is the ferryman on the River Styx. And I've called him Tharalgon, and he is played by Alan Rickman.
Of course he is.
And so basically the mythology of him is that he's he's bound to that book. So if you read the right incantation, anybody who reads something from that book forces him to do a thing. And he read the incantation wrong, and so it made him close that off. And it also made it so that he was able to leave. He was trapped there. He's a soul eater, and he was trapped there by some god who was angry with him for eating the soul of his favorite human. And so he was trapped there for all eternity in this very Greek mythology ironic kind of way, where I don't know why we don't have any stories actually written about this guy, but I guess Ray knows about them and no one else does. And
well, I mean, Gozer's the same way.
Yeah, that's true. And the idea is he's forced to watch all these souls, these to him kind of morsels, pass back and forth past him. Every day and not be able to eat any of them. Well, he comes down to Earth, and now we've got this big demon that eats souls in the midst of this catastrophe where souls can't cross over. So, on the one hand, it's a solution. But the problem, of course, is that when the souls get eaten, they cease to exist, and they don't go on to any sort of afterlife. And so Tharlgon is going around and eating souls, and he's also looking for the Black Book, because if he can destroy the Black Book, no one can control him. And he goes, and yeah, I did this. I know you avoided it. I put Slimer in mine. And he finds Slimer.
Well, so did Matt. Mine's the odd one out.
No, I know he did. Tharlgon is able to peer into people's minds and even into souls' minds, if however that works. And he's going around and reading souls for information, and he figures out that Slimer knows where the Ghostbusters are, and he takes. So Slimer takes him to, is forced to, or he's going to get eaten, takes him to the Ghostbusters headquarters, and Tharlgon uses, breaks into the containment grid so that he can eat a bunch of souls, and frees Nixon and a bunch of other souls, and a lot of them fly off, but some of them get eaten, and he ends up, I can't remember, I'm looking at this, I can't remember how he knows that Liam is connected in any way to the Ghostbusters, but I'd have to figure that out. But anyway, so long story short, by the beginning of the third act, we're into, a new mass hysteria, and and Tharlgon has found the Black Book and eaten it. And Tharlgon becomes our big giant monster, because you have to have something giant at the end of a Ghostbusters thing.
Yeah.
And when he eats the book, it turns him into a giant super demon that can eat ghosts by like the thousands.
That's one of the things I thought about with Ghostbusters 2, where I was like, okay, if Ghostbusters 2 doesn't exist, I don't think you feel like you have to have something giant, but it's because it became repetition that you're like, well, of course there has to be something giant at the end of the Ghostbusters movie.
Well, it's also weird because, I mean, it's only 2 movies, so it's not really a pattern, but that's all we had, and the giant thing at the end of 2 isn't a threat.
Yeah.
It's
what'd be really funny is
it's not the conflict.
For, I guess, the new one, or just another Ghostbusters movie or something, is if there was a massive threat that was tiny.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Like that, the Halloween episode of Buffy, but if he was dangerous.
Yeah, or invisible, but then like that'd be better to do in a thing where people don't believe in ghosts.
No, but trust me, it's a giant wolf crab spider whale dragon. No, don't ask me to explain what it looks like.
Okay, so I'm into the third act, and I'm gonna mostly just read the rest of what's here, so that I don't get lost and confused. And I had a bunch of detail at the beginning, and it gets a little bit less detailed as it goes along. So now the Ghostbusters have souls coming out of dying people every minute that can't cross over, dozens of calls an hour, a soul-eating giant demon running amok, and a world full of demand with no Ghostbusters to meet the supply. So they're kind of making the government's point for them, sort of. And the Ghostbusters start giving proton packs to anybody they remotely trust. But they only have like a dozen. So they end up having to get. So they end up having to make a pact with the government where they actually give the government their designs so that they can mass produce proton packs. And so they're forced to work with the government, even though they're not real sure that they want to have to do that. So then Liam ends up kind of becoming a Ghostbuster. He apologizes for his impulsiveness and agrees that, obviously some ghosts really need to be busted, and he becomes a Ghostbuster. And then Nixon goes back to the White House and possesses Clinton and takes over Washington. And we have this all-out war on the streets between Ghostbusters and ghosts, but also some good ghosts that are joining the fight against the evil ghosts to make it, complicated. Ghosts aren't good or bad necessarily. And we even end up with a couple of ghosts by the end of the movie that become Ghostbusters themselves. And Egon, I didn't talk about his character arc. Egon has this thing where he starts thinking about the ethics of what they've been doing, because it's always been about the theoretical science for him. But I'm thinking, and this might be too coincidental, so I don't know if I would really want to do this, but one idea I had was that when the rift gets cut off, his father dies and gets trapped.
Oh.
And suddenly they get like a call about his father wandering around, and he's like, am I going to bust my own dad? And so he starts thinking about the ethics of it. So then Venkman dreams up this insane plan, this is how it ends, to try to make a truce with the ghosts that are taking over, telling them that they have a common enemy in Tharalgon, because of course he wants to eat them all. And he has this almost uncharacteristic speech about how ghosts are just people who have already shirked off the mortal coil, but they're still people, and he doesn't want to see them lose their souls. And he talks about the Tharalgon as like the Grim Reaper. And I don't know if I love this. I had a really tough time with the third act on this. But the best thing I came up with to solve this problem is you make it a big teamwork thing, and a bunch of the good ghosts all come together and possess Tharalgon at the same time and force him to go back up to his post. And that's kind of the best I could come up with. I don't know if I'll love it, but that's what I've got.
Well, I mean, these are pitches. These aren't even first drafts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, mine's starting to feel like a first draft. I just couldn't stop writing on this. But so then at the end, basically, we have kind of the same status quo that we had at the beginning, where the Ghostbusters are expanding and Winston takes over the team in New York, and he has this newfound confidence, and several of the others go off to other cities, and Venkman learns to let New York go and goes and lives with Dana and stops being a Ghostbuster, or maybe starts his own team there, I'm not sure. And then I'm trying to remember, because I added a thing like a final kind of stinger scene, and I can't remember what that was. Let me see if I can find it here. I don't remember. It was something about how... Oh, okay, here it is. So the government initially promises to ease off the regulations that they set up at the beginning, but then we find out that they're secretly already developing military ghostbusting equipment. And they're going to force the Ghostbusters to close up shop after they get all their facilities set up, and then they take them over. And that's like the big setup for a potential sequel, which I have no idea how you would write that, but that was kind of the idea I had for how that ends. But anyway, so that's my pitch. That was long.
It's good. It wasn't as long as I mean, I think you skipped some stuff, but like recording wise, it wasn't super long. It was about as long as Matt and I's pitches were.
I think it was longer than that, but yeah, I don't know. I got nervous that it was too long, so I kind of rushed it a bit. But yeah, I definitely wrote more than that.
Well, you asked me to tell you, so I'm gonna have to tell you it's stupid.
Oh.
I don't know if that's on recording or not. I might have made a callback to a joke from before we started recording.
You did. You made a call back to a joke from when we were recording something for Patreon.
Oh, is it in the Patreon one?
Yes. So the
Oh,
Patreon
okay. Some
subscribers
people
will know what you're talking about. Yeah.
28 people will get it.
Yeah. But you thought we had like 14.
Now you're just calling back to more Patreon stuff.
So yeah, my big concern with it is that it's too serious.
I don't think that's an issue with Ghostbusters in a pitch.
Yeah. Well, it's just,
that's the problem with Ghostbusters pitching.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you said that at the beginning of yours, where you were like, it's hard to pitch the humor. Like, you're not going to write all the jokes.
Yeah.
But I felt like Matt kind of tried to pitch his more as a comedy than you did.
Yeah, well, my favorite thing in Matt's pitch is when he explains that the big bad thing at the end is a dead god, and they're like, "Is that a ghost?" And they're like, "Well, kind of, but not really."
That's awesome.
But anyway, yeah, no, it's interesting that you have parallels to our pitches as well.
Yeah. Like I said, especially Matt's, because I took that whole ghosts or people idea and made it the whole thing. And I hadn't... and I also meant to mention that at the end, all the Ghostbusters get patches on the other side that are ghosts without slashes through them.
Oh, that's cool.
So they try to take the humane part into account after that. And that's kind of the point of the whole thing. It's a thing you got to be careful about, that it doesn't border on being, like too preachy or, like...
And knowing what I know about Dan Aykroyd, I'm not sure if he'd be cool with that.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, and then it starts to veer away from the horror angle some, because you start to humanize the demons too much.
Well, and actually, having listened to Dan Aykroyd talk, he might argue with you that they're not dead people, that they might be parallel universe being. He has a bunch of weird stuff that he talks about in the special features on that DVD.
Well, that's true, but the problem, but I would argue with Dan Aykroyd, who's not here to defend himself, and there's no reason he would be, that they have...
I didn't want to spoil this, but I have Dan Aykroyd here with me.
Oh wow! Well, boy, he's really been listening patiently for these last 40 minutes. That's amazing.
He's steaming. He hates it.
Oh, does he? Yeah. Well, luckily we have no way to go back to 1996 and make this movie. No, what I was gonna say is there's obviously plenty of precedent set in both of those movies that at least some of their ghosts were people that were on the Earth before they became ghosts.
And now I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? Eric?
Well, at least we got most of that video.
Eric?
Oh, I can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's weird. I heard you the whole time.
Of course
but no. What I was saying is, there's precedent that at least some of the people in both of those movies, or some of the ghosts, were people first.
Yeah, the Scoleri brothers. You're right.
Yeah, so like they can't all be from alternate dimension. Like, I don't know what Slimer was. I actually, because part of what I was trying to do with mine was add some mythology and create some rules. Because part of my problem with the Ghostbusters is I don't know what enough of the rules are, and that makes it kind of difficult to write a pitch. Like, I feel like, especially when you get to 2, we're just real broad with all of that, and anything goes. And I have no idea how any of the the made up, the pseudoscience and the physics work. But I thought about putting in a thing about why Slimer looks the way he does and what he used to be.
Well, he's supposed to be John Belushi.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. That's true. But I thought it might be neat if it was kind of like a Buffy vampire thing. Where like the vampires, like the older they are, the more the less like human they start to look. And I thought it could be cool if you start to look like something like Slimer if you go back and forth through the portal too many times.
Slimer's like Caligula. Caligula.
Yeah,
and like it's just so much time has passed, and he's a ghost anyway, so he can't really like do Caligula things, so he's just eating.
Yeah. So I don't know. Anyway, well, thanks for letting me do my pitch, even though I wasn't able to be there the other day.
It's cool. Matt was bummed that he wasn't able to be here tonight to record with us. So
Oh yeah, that would have been great. Well, one of these days I'll actually talk to him. That'll be great. Anyway, that's all I got.
all right. Well, usually we end with telling what the prompt is going to be for next week. So I guess we'll just cut to credits.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
do you want me to mention what I would have picked?
sure. And unless you want to save it for whenever you actually come back.
You
It's
know
up
what?
to you.
Yeah, maybe I will. Yeah, I'll save it.
Okay. But I know what it is, so I'm gonna put it as a prompt before you come back, just to spite you.
Man.
Well, I guess that's I was Eric.
And I'm Captain Logan.
Bye.